Hello, and welcome to the Live by Heart Today show number 70. This is a show designed to help you navigate change, uncertainty, and the new world we found ourselves in. We'll talk a little bit about science. We'll talk about how our body works. We'll talk a little bit about intuition, and we'll talk a lot about transformation.
Streaming from Retro Earth Studio and brought to you by
Learn to play jazz piano like a pro, by a pro, with Jazz Piano Pro Essentials at jazzpianopro.com.
And wearehistorically.com, conscious human apparel. It's time for the next episode of Live by Heart
Today.
Hello, I'm Dawn Spiegelberg, medical intuitive and coherence coach. This show is in our growth series, and today's theme is ties that bond. With me for today's Heart to Heart is my co-host, Wendy R. Wolf, professional transformation facilitator.
Hey, Dawn. What a great topic. Rusty, our producer before we started, ties that bond, James Bond. And we get such a wonderful chance to work with Rusty. It's such a blessing. And he was saying our last show, which was Pathway to Peace, about the vagus nerve, he was saying, what stays in Vegas.
What happens in Vegas?
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Yeah. So funny. So we're building on last week about that place of being in peace through the body and breath and movement, gentle movement, and gentle changing how we talk to ourselves in meditation. We're going on today to really exciting stuff, oxytocin. So what you have to say?
We've spoken a little bit about oxytocin before, and it's worth discussing again because we're talking about growth. This whole series that we're on is about growth, and without vagus nerve tone, which we talked about last time, you cannot grow. Without oxytocin, there's a level of growth that's really limited. And so we're bringing it back around to talk about the importance of oxytocin. So most people know about oxytocin as the hormone of nursing babies and giving birth to those babies. If you do a quick search on the internet, if you know how to spell it, you'll find that's the first thing that is listed, right? It's all about infants and babies. I think it's a good connection. I think it's a good starting point to talk about babies because babies rely on their adults for absolutely everything. And so they have a very strong desire to stay connected to their adults, right? Doesn't that make sense? It's a matter of their survival. And we talked about the nervous system responses of stress and fear and relaxation and digestion last show. So if you missed show 69, please follow up and watch it. It's a really great show. And we're going to talk about how oxytocin is actually the glue that can help keep us in the parasympathetic nervous system state, which is stimulating our vagus nerve. And I'm sure today Wendy's going to bring a lot of humor to our discussion because humor is another thing that helps keeps the stress at bay. You started with humor too, right?
It does. Yeah. And I was just noticing when we're getting ready for today, how about the Dalai Lama and how when I notice him, what do I notice? It's like I notice peace and I notice the playfulness, the humor. And that's just such a healthy place to be. And we're building on that with the oxytocin. I find it interesting. Before we were starting, you were talking about it's the bonding, it's the glue. And I thought you were talking about it's the glue in relationships, which it is. But you are talking about it as it's the glue that holds us in the parasympathetic.
Yeah.
Fascinating. That's even better. That means both is good. But wow.
So it's the glue that holds us in the parasympathetic because oxytocin inhibits our fear centers. Ooh. So let me explain that so that it's really clear. We have two states that our nervous system can be in. We can be in the fear or we can be in the love and acceptance. If oxytocin inhibits fear, right? It's inhibiting fear. That means it's increasing our love and acceptance. It's increasing our state of relaxation, our resting and digesting. And that's beneficial for us because that's the state we can grow in. And not just grow physically, but it's also grow mentally and grow spiritually, right? It's a growth that is about us moving ahead in our, I don't want to call it evolution, but I guess we could call it evolution. It's about us being better people.
Maturing.
Yeah.
Yeah. From in our souls and also into the world, making a difference that we can't make if we're scared and hiding and not connected with ourselves and others.
You're right. And I think maybe that's one of the biggest concerns I had during the early and summer portions of us living in coronavirus, because so many people were afraid. And, there were the people that were looting, right? All of the things that were happening, that's fear inducing. Yes. And not just fear inducing for the people in the cities where a lot of the looting and rioting was happening, but the people who are looting and rioting are in fear.
Yes. And
you don't loot and riot if you're not in fear, right? The mechanism doesn't work that way. So it was a big concern of mine to see how so many people were sympathetic and how that was disconnecting us. Yeah. And we were more and more disconnected rather than connected socially, even social connection.
And going into fight and going into enemy images.
Yes. Yes. And the perceived enemy is something we can't see. We can't fight a virus, which makes it interesting because a lot of the signs on the highway say, let's fight the virus, stay home. Let's fight the virus. But staying home does not allow you to shift out of fear, because in order to relieve those fear centers, the stimulation of fear, we're designed to fight, to run, right? Hiding doesn't do it. The neurotransmitters that are in our bodies that stimulate that fear response need to be taken back in. And when they're taken up by actually fighting, right? By moving our body, by running. And then at that moment, we can shift into the relaxation response. Yeah. Yeah. I want to take a moment and go back to the connection and how we're connected from the very start. So in utero, the babies that are waiting to be born are directly connected to their mother. So boom, we're connected automatically from day one, from the twinkle in the eye, we're connected. And then our first disconnection is birth. Yeah. And we're completely separated from the body and the environment that was the only thing we knew up to that point in time.
Yes.
And not just the body around us, but the blood and the nutrients coming through the umbilical cord. So that is a dramatic separation of everything We're no longer getting food from our parent. We're no longer getting oxygen from our parent. We're no longer getting the warmth, right? We're not in the same environment. Everything. And guess what? The lights are bright out here, and I've never used these eyes before.
Cold.
Yeah.
Cold.
It's cold. Yeah,
And
everything is different.
So used to be, I go from being in my mother to out in the, I mean, it's just huge.
Mm-hmm. Everything is different. Absolutely everything.
Heartbeat.
Oh, yeah. And you mentioned heartbeat. I want to say another thing. This is really fascinating. When we're in utero, there is a space, they call it a hole in the heart. There is a space in our heart that allows the blood to flow in a different capacity because we're not getting blood, oxygenated blood from our lungs that's then necessary to go to our body, right? That mechanism isn't working and isn't necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But by virtue of being born, the pressure, the stress of being born closes up that part of the heart. So that then the oxygenated blood from the lungs does go into the heart and the things flow I'll say the right way, so that the oxygenated blood then goes through the heart and then out to the tissues.
Wow.
Otherwise, our body does not receive it properly.
Mm-hmm. So it's a gigantic shift.
Yeah.
And the oxytocin comes from, during that, the oxytocin comes into the mother and into the baby.
Yes. Because
for that process.
Yes.
Wow.
What most people don't realize is that the feelings that the mother feels are protein molecules. We've talked about polypeptides. And protein molecules go across blood-brain barrier and uterine placental barriers.
Yes.
So what a mother feels, her baby is feeling. So a baby is receiving information about the environment outside the mother before the baby's born.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Well, you know, the good doctors knew this for a long time, but now the science is backing it up.
Yeah.
Because the pediatrician that we went to when we were little said that to my mother, you know, back in when, you know, my sister and I were born, but their science wasn't there, but he's just like, I know this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it's a good doctor.
Yeah.
Good doctor. Okay. So we're connected in utero and then we're completely disconnected. And I mentioned oxytocin is the hormone of uterine contraction and lactation. So during birth, the baby is flooded with oxytocin, just like the mother. And this is the hormone of connection. So in a natural birth, where there's contractions and there's birth canal birth, there is strong oxytocin, lots of it. In births that don't have that same outcome, I think there's a lot less. Mm-hmm. In fact, friends of mine, when I was giving birth, those ones who ended up having a cesarean, I noticed they weren't as connected to their children. Giving birth for them was just like, that's it. Right? There was just, it was a disconnect. When you say disconnect, it was a complete disconnect.
So it had to be invested in over time with hopefully breastfeeding, which stimulates oxytocin for mother and child.
Yeah. And so here's an interesting thing. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I noticed those friends who ended up with cesareans also they were not, I'll say the word committed. They weren't as committed to nursing, or perhaps it wasn't as much of a priority, right? So it really set up a completely different environment. They were more likely to bottle feed.
Breastfeeding is hard, by the way. I just want to say, having that, breastfeeding is like not a walk in the park. It actually takes something to get that system in to go. And not everyone makes that, even people who want to, not everyone makes it.
Yes. Yeah, there are some things that get in the way of it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And oxytocin is one of the big players in that happening. And it's positive reinforcement.
Yes.
So when you nurse, your baby's getting oxytocin and your levels are increasing, right? And it's increasing your connection to your baby.
Yes. Is there something about having enjoying oxytocin at the same time with someone like mother and child? Is something that it helps the bonding more?
Yes, but I don't know that I haven't read any articles that talk about that in particular, except what they have said is that hugging and kissing someone causes your oxytocin to spike. Now, it doesn't have to be a baby.
Right.
It can be, someone you love. It can be your older child. But hugging and kissing, they found, spiked oxytocin production. So, of course, if a mother is nursing her child, they're right at that distance, that 11 to 12 inches away, where eye contact is important. It's cementing, it's bonding that child.
Yes. And there's exercises for romantic couples as well, to snuggle, to hug, to kiss, to gaze.
Yes, to look in their eyes.
To gaze. Like it encourages that bonding.
Because it produces oxytocin.
Yeah. And we need it because, life is hard and relationships are not a walk in the park either. And it helps to have that bonding, I think, to get us through the hard parts.
Yep. Exactly. And that's a great segue into what oxytocin does. It stimulates organs in our body. So the sexual organs get stimulated, right? And that attributes to the bonds that happen between a husband and wife. And so that's a strong family bond, right? Family bonds. With the divorce rate so high, it seems like family bonds can be weak or are sometimes weak,
Yeah.
Interestingly, they found oxytocin is lower, levels of oxytocin is lower in people who are autistic. And we know autistic people have trouble with social understanding, understanding social behaviors, and social norms. And they have struggle building relationships. It's like they don't know how. It's like it's broken.
Yeah.
Oxytocin triggers protective behavior. So you're thinking, the mama bear.
Yes, totally. And the papa bear, I want to add the papa bear.
I was just going to say, because it is a hormone that is spiked for couples, it also helps the dad be a part of what's going on with the mother and the newborn baby, right? Because there can be that disconnect that sometimes dads feel because the hormones are so strong between the mother and the baby. But including dad in, maybe bottle feeding a couple times, that increases his oxytocin and is still stimulating the babies too. So there's lots of things to keep that family unit strongly bonded, and increasing the protection is one of the benefits.
Yes. And I think I said this before, but it's just so relevant here. My sister's husband from Costa Rica, when their child was small, really small, he'd come home from work every day and he'd bare his chest and put the baby on his chest and have the baby on his chest for like a long time, hours, like every night.
That's called skin to skin.
So like it was part of his culture, which it isn't generally in the US, to be actively bonding, even though he was away most of the day, and even though he couldn't breastfeed, and even though, and I felt like that was just so incredible.
So what's happening, and you've heard the word entrainment, we have the electromagnetic field, and infants entrain themselves to the respiration and heartbeat of their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe this is why SIDS can be such a problem, because parents who put their children in cribs when they're really young, the children struggle to breathe and have a regular heart rate. Does that make sense?
Because they haven't entrained to how we humans do it.
Because they're young, and there's nothing for them to entrain to, because they're in a separate room, in a separate bed.
Which is not how we grew up through the millennia.
Exactly.
Like everybody was so together all the time. There was
all the time. Yeah. And I wanted to mention, we live in a society where, there's car seats, so the babies are separate. There's strollers, so the babies are separate. Mm-hmm. But it used to be that if you had to do something, you'd wrap that baby to you and go do it. So they would still be entrained all day long.
Yes, interesting. Yeah. And oxytocin. and not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Not alone.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. With that, babies, car seats, and strollers, let's take a short break. And when we come back, we'll wrap up with the hormones that are considered the 3 happy hormones. And we'll roll it all into our oxytocin discussion.
Awesome. Thank you.
Let's give a shout out to our sponsors. Thank you, We Are Historically, for making this show possible. Shop online at wearehistorically.com.
Hi, I'm Dawn Spiegelberg, a heart coherence coach. And let's talk about happiness and how you can keep having it in the face of crisis. How can you possibly live a healthy life when you're faced with crisis after crisis after crisis? How do you stay happy? How do you maintain your calm? How do you keep a clear mindset in order to know what to do in moments of crisis? If you need a happiness adjustment, if you want to learn how to be grateful at any time in your life, contact me today so you can experience heart coherence.
Hello, my name is Wendy R. Wolf from Graceful Soul Academy, and I'd really love it if you visited and played with us. Every Thursday we're getting together, building community, being real together, enjoying active meditation, and we are learning and we're growing and we're deepening together in our souls. Join us this month as we dive deeper into neutrality. What does that mean? Equanimity, finding balance within, and spiritual perspective, having clarity in ourselves and how we perceive the world. Thank you, and I really look forward to getting together and playing on Thursday night.
Hi, I'm Darius Wilrich. I instruct an online video course that teaches anyone how to play jazz piano like a pro with my proven step-by-step system that makes it simple to learn. Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Learn the quickest way to start memorizing and playing scales today. Download my free Quick Start Guide.
Welcome back to the Live by Heart Today show. This is number 70. And I'm excited about it because I love talking about oxytocin and the vagus nerve, which was last show, and living by heart. And I haven't quite wrapped around, brought it full circle about why oxytocin is important for us to live by heart. And yet it is, because it's the hormone of connection. And it allows us to live outside of stress. And I want to mention that it combats cortisol. So if we are flooded with oxytocin because we're bonding with our children, we're bonding with our special spouses, our partners, when we're staying in connection, we are not allowing cortisol to be produced, right? We're suppressing cortisol production, which keeps the stress at bay, which allows us to stay in connection and the parasympathetic response, which is rest and digest and love.
Yay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was noticing, yesterday it was a particularly stressful day. I wasn't feeling well. I had a lot of internal stressors, and then came some external stressors. And I just felt like, a little perfect stormish. And I just went up to Michael and I was like, pretty much like, I need a snuggle, and I snuggled into his shoulder and like held on for just a few minutes, just like a port in a storm. And, I have internal tools I use all the time and external tools, but like this is one of my external tools too. I just go up to my honey and I snuggle in. I say, I just need to hold on for a minute. And I just really noticed my whole system just,
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, all right, I have to go back to the things, but like, it just was like, it's really very helpful. And we don't know how that always all have that available. That's recognizable, but we can hopefully be continuing to build people that we feel safe and comfortable with, to snuggle up to hug, to find, to be ports in the storm for each other.
Mm-hmm. To reconnect to.
Yeah. And certainly keep that in mind with our children, whoever they are.
You reminded me, that is one of the big benefits of reading to your children in bed at night. Everybody snuggling up, being together.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you have to go do and be.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody relaxing and reading a book is good preparation for going to sleep, right? It's spiking your oxytocin, it's spiking your connection and your feelings of safety and belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
with,
what you do.
Yes. And in families and in communities, in friend groups, and it's differs by culture, but in friend groups, in all these places, we can, I have a group of friends and we get together and we just like pile onto the couch together. It's like it rebonds after not seeing each other for so long. It reconnects us over time, over the decades as they go by. Yes, we do fun things, we say fun things, but we also are like snuggly. And it's a healthy thing. And also with our romantic couplings, whatever they look like, it's not just one and done.
Yeah.
If we keep investing there, we keep getting dividends. If we don't invest there, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune can overcome us more easily. So what you're talking about is so helpful, I think.
Yeah. And that's a great example of piling on the couch. That's another way of entrainment. I mentioned the infants being held, all your friends holding each other, and your respirations are matching and your heart rate is matching, and that's connecting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find with Michael, I don't know, like I had a few partners before Michael. With Michael, it was day and night. It was just like, if the first fight we had, he was in Hawaii for a month. We're so much more likely to have conflict over the phone than we are in person, because in person, we're so much more likely to be touching each other and looking at each other and holding each other and finding a rhythm together. When we're away from each other for like a month, which we have done regularly in a relationship, like that recalibrating, that putting the gears back together is it takes a minute, but like it takes the bodies being together. It's very helpful.
And that's the time to resynchronize.
Yes, like synchronize. Yeah.
I want to mention briefly, there are 3 happy hormones, and oxytocin is one of them. And the other 2, I'm sure people have heard of: dopamine, which is that hormone in the center of your head that is a great stimulator for feelings of connection, right, and calm; and serotonin, which everybody feels over Thanksgiving because they eat a bunch of turkey and then it causes them to be rested and want to take a nap, right? And what do we do over Thanksgiving? A bunch of us get together. So we get back into the electromagnetic field of the people that we love and trust, hopefully. And you're entraining your heart rate and your respiration to all those people. And you're developing, you're producing, your body is naturally increasing its dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin levels that is increasing your connection to those people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So these are the big three. Yum, yum.
Yeah, the big three. So before we wrap up, there are a few other things I want to mention about oxytocin. And this really is just amazing to me. And that is oxytocin, the chemical oxytocin, has the same composition in all mammals. That means, Wendy, your dog that you were so connected to, you were so connected to.
I was so connected to.
Chemically, you were connected to her.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And women tend to have higher levels of oxytocin in general, which means we have the ability to influence the men in our lives strongly so that we can be the catalyst to increase their oxytocin levels.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because when ours is stimulated, like if we're close, ours is stimulated.
Well, we tend to have a higher amount already, right? So we're starting from a higher level. And then, all right, so if this is the man and this is the woman, actually, this would be the woman at a higher level. We can do things like hugging and kissing.
Oh, initiate.
And
initiate
and that brings it up for men.
Oh, cool.
Gaze into their eyes.
Yes.
So we hold the keys.
Yes. And I wonder if that changes at teenagerness. Is that one of the changes? Like, because the kids would probably have it at the same level.
What I'm guessing is that the teenagerness has other hormones that are happening that are also strong, and they compete for oxytocin levels. So even if you are a teenager and you have a relatively high level of oxytocin, because other things are happening, the oxytocin kind of, becomes a hormone in the crowd.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which makes, for me, it more important to stay connected with my teenagers, to do the things that keep us connected.
Yeah. Because they're doing the things where they're bonding with their friends, which is appropriate, and they're finding more boundaries and disambiguating, which is appropriate. But like, can we maintain our relationships while that happens, and encourage them to have their own life and stay bonded with us and the family?
Yeah. In closing, we bond when we feel good.
Yay!
Yeah. Thanks, Wendy. And thanks to everyone who is watching our show today. Please let us know. We want to hear from you. Leave us a comment. And for more information, how you can live by heart. And we've produced something called The Magic to Heal from Stress. And if you're interested in that information, we'll be launching it sometime in the fall. For information about that, or for information on how you can develop tools from Wendy or from me, please go to livebyhearttoday.com. Also, like and follow our page and turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of our programs. We're here every Thursday at 4:44 Pacific time. From our heart to yours, increasing oxytocin and creating a better tomorrow, because we live by heart today.
And that concludes this portion of
Live by Heart Today!
Thank you for watching. View more episodes on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you, We Are Storkly, for your conscious human apparel. Shop online at wearestorkly.com.
Hi, I'm Darius Wilrich. I'll teach you everything you need to know about playing jazz piano like a pro with my 12-week online video course and downloadable guidebook, Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Enroll today at jazzpianopro.com.
Thank you for joining us. Have a happy always. Visit our website to view more episodes.